there are Grails, and then there is the Grail. The 2001 Fall-Winter Riot 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 Bomber by Raf Simons holds the illustrious title of being the most expensive item to ever sell on Grailed.com at a price tag of $47,000. Why this jacket? What makes it so special? What makes the Riot Bomber so coveted that a used garment not even 20 years old would sell for around the same price as a brand new BMW 4 Series? That is what we will attempt to explore and explain today. Where does this story begin? Do we start in 1989 with a young, wide-eyed Raf Simons sitting in the audience of Martin Margiela's 1990 spring all-white show? Or should we flash forward to today, only weeks ago, when world superstar Drake would invite me to his mansion to help him with the filming of his social isolation thriller, The Toosie Slide. Big Scorp makes some big flexes, not excluding the fact that he's got a giant mansion, a private pool, fine art, but among these flexes were his wardrobe. Now, we're not talking about the infamous $1 million outfit, but we are talking about an outfit that is at least valued at $47,000. While Drake does reference the channel favorite Aleeks by name, it's his bomber that catches my eye. In order to investigate this question with thoroughness, with detail, with the kind of sophistication that you know only can be provided on this channel, let's try to break it down into some sections. The first one being the influencer effect. Before I go any further, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. That's super dope. And leave a like for the video and comment down below. All those things are super helpful. We got new videos every Wednesday and Sunday from this channel, so join the club. Let's get started.
Oh yeah, influencers.
Here are some numbers. 74% of people say they look to social media in order to make purchasing decisions. And fashion and beauty is deeply entrenched in influencer and celebrity marketing. 60% of brands in this space say they utilize influencer marketing to some degree. So what you're thinking? Raf Simons is a high fashion designer that is above this kind of trite or typical marketing. And the garment in particular is an archive piece. It's not for sale right now. Yes, that's true, but like I mentioned, the archive market is still a market. There are still people who are influenced by what they see online, and that informs their decisions. So, who is going to wear this item to propel it to its maximum status? It's gotta be an icon, an artist, a person who basically was in the center, the nucleus of men's fashion, perhaps during that time period in the 2010s. That person, of course, is Kanye West. Now, I've got to be honest with you. My opinion is Kanye's fallen off a little bit, or a lot of it. That's the truth. But in the mid-2000s, I feel like Kanye was at his zenith in terms of his authenticity as viewed by his fans and his kind of attention and ability to control or influence menswear. At a point, seems like one of the most visible and stylish people in the planet. I think like one of the best examples, his status as like a fashion god, is his 2014 interview for GQ. I think it's kind of like a classic editorial. He styled all of the shoots. These fits, even though they do seem dated, are still cool in my eyes. It's kind of like this point where Kanye really had his finger on the pulse of what men's clothing was, the direction it was going in, and people were really paying attention to what he was wearing and copying it. And among the kind of bombers that Kanye really elevated, we've got the Velvet Hyder Ackerman, and of course, the Riot 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 Bomber. Kanye started wearing it around 2014, and he was seen like throughout the next 2 years wearing it all the time, sometimes just like multiple days in a row. And I think this played a significant role. This is when Kanye was at his peak of influencing what men wanted to wear, and it's really clear how the bomber influenced his collection. I mean, the guy even wore it when he was talking to Raf, the designer.
No one has ever done that.
Nobody's ever done that.
Ever done that.
So you can take it or leave it. And I know there were other people have worn this bomber, like Kimmy, but obviously she got it from Kanye. I just think that his endorsement, the fact that he wore it so much when he seemed to have the most influence, plays a significant role. And that, I think, is the first cornerstone. Now, I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there with, like, there's a bunch of archivists, there's a bunch of nuts watching this video who are like, Kanye can't do that. He's not in charge of fashion and its influence. So let's go again. Let's look at this again. Why this bomber? Why this piece from Raf Simons, among so many others? In a 2016 article, Heist Nabaidi actually interviewed Grail's Jake Menser, and he listed the top 10 pieces that were most coveted by Raf Simons. Of course, the bomber is included in the list, but what about those other 10? What made them not good enough? Too crappy to sell for this price? What about the consumed parachute bomber? To helmet Langy? What about the Virginia Creeper Digi Camo hoodie? That piece has the right fit, has an interesting texture and silhouette. I don't see why that shouldn't have become just as coveted, just as desired. Of course it is desired, but it's never sold for that price. What about the distressed Nebraska crew neck? That seems like a piece that would really fetch a high price, and I'm sure it has in the past, but still, the bomber is the piece that we kind of signal out as being the Raf Simons item. And I think the fact that Drake wore it in this recent video, you could say he's not very fashionable, or this is all kind of very superficial if you want, but it's still kind of signaling that this bomber is significant. That's not to discount the steep prices that these other pieces are currently valued at, or at least listed at on Grailed. Like the similarly iconic New Order parka, priced at $300,000.
Jeez, this poorly keyed idiot is going to drive me up a wall. 30,000.
Or this Raf Simons times Sterling Ruby coat, priced at $50,000. That's 3 more. At least with this piece, you could argue it was hand-painted and signed by Raf Simons and Sterling Ruby. Sterling Ruby is a legitimate contemporary artist, and the unique nature of this singular piece maybe is more arguable that this is worth that price tag more than the Riot Bomber. Of course, let's not get it twisted. These are asking prices for a piece. That doesn't mean it's worth that much. Something is only worth $47,000 when somebody is willing to buy it at that price. I can put my ASOS sweatshirt on Grailed for $100,000 tonight, but that doesn't mean it's worth $100,000. Is there a specific reason that a Raf piece became more valuable than, say, a Vivienne Westwood piece from the 1980s? Or a Yohji piece from the 90s? There are numerous fashion gods that have deeply occupied the mind space of menswear enthusiasts and archivists. Why would it be a piece by an active designer like Raf compared to something from Helmut Lang or Martin Margiela, 2 designers who actually influenced Raf Simons and are no longer working? Why isn't one of their pieces the end-all be-all garment that sells for the most on Grailed? My theory, my thought is perhaps the answer lies with the 2001 show itself. Poetically, 2001 and 2020 have much in common. It's likely the pandemic right now will play a major role in influencing culture and policy for the years to come, much like 9/11 did in America. And there's something uniquely compelling and haunting about Raf Simons' 2001 fall-winter show that seemed to forecast the war, anxiety, and paranoia that would come in the following September. With his 2001 collection, Raf returned after a one-year hiatus from fashion design. The Belgian wonderkid had established himself in the fashion zeitgeist during the mid-90s for his bold designs and emphasis on youth, unrest, and culture surrounding music from punk to shoegaze and glam rock. Also, in fashion, we often give Eddie Salmon all the credit for popularizing the slim, tailored look during his tenure at Dior Homme. Eddie's design genius is undeniable. Raf Simons also paved the way for this revolution in menswear with collections featuring svelte boys and slim, tailored pieces. In some ways, that's why his return in 2001 was such a revelation. Raf returned with a silhouette on the opposite end of the spectrum. Instead of slim suits, we see oversized, boxy shapes. He said was inspired by young Eastern European men who he saw draped in layers upon layers in order to stay warm. The collection is undeniably apocalyptic, and the Riot Bomber is a standout piece for multiple reasons. For one, it uncannily foreshadows the obsession with high-end streetwear during the 2010s. References and graphics. That's another element that makes the Riot Bomber so kind of iconic for Raf. Raf Simons has, since day one, worn his inspirations on his sleeve. In this case, more or less on the chest. This Curator Reference aesthetic has become more and more common in the age of the internet we're living right now. It's hard not to point to Raf as a forefather for graphic-heavy collage style and a lot of contemporary fashion. It almost feels now like when Raf does it, like one of his last collections, it's so played out that it's like irrelevant for his designs. It's like the Raf thing that he's always done now feels overplayed. Referencing David Bowie and the Bauhaus movement, the Bomber features multiple monochrome patches on the front, stitched and faded. An homage not only to his personal inspirations from like music to art movements to a bunch of other stuff, but also it's clearly a reference to the way that people would wear, like people who are into punk or rock music would wear patches and like adorn jackets and bombers. He's not only saying this is what I'm interested in, like this kind of art I love, but also this kind of style, like these aesthetics that young people do. I think that is dope. I was supposed to edit that line because I didn't write it very well. From the camo to the oversized fit and the proto-streetwear graphics, the Riot Bomber now looks like it was pulled from the future to be featured in this runway. In so many ways, the aesthetic at play here foreshadows the direction Raf would continue to move in with future collections, and the ripple effect his design would have on the whole of fashion to come. It's not even, like, that's not even absurd to say. It's like these collections, his early collections, especially starting from 2001, maybe like all the way to 2005, these collections really feel so influential looking back on them. It's perhaps also because this collection was the start of aesthetic that Raf would continue to explore. It's the start of his initial genius, like Picasso's The Young Girls of Avignon, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Maybe it could be argued that paintings like Guernica were Picasso's true cubist-flavored masterpiece, but Avignon was the painting that would influence countless artists to come. That's the genius comparison that I'm making right now. It's like Raf Simons' Riot Bomber is the piece that would influence these designers because it's the first one that really was the exploration of this style in the same way that Les Demoiselles is like Picasso's first real cubist masterpiece. And like Picasso, it's not just the artistic talent that makes your work so covetable, it's the space you occupy in the zeitgeist. It's how you navigate the culture, and unlike a lot of Raf's contemporaries, he's continued to design during what is right now menswear's renaissance, and has taken positions as a creative director for some of the world's biggest houses. Karada next. But no man is an island and no garment exists in a vacuum. The last piece of the puzzle is the archive market itself.
Are they not recording? Are you recording, Crickshaw?
Before charismatic geniuses like myself discussed menswear, the rapidly growing community of enthusiasts began obsessing over pieces on forums like Style Zeitgeist and numerous Tumblrs. Sites like Style Forum did provide a platform for buying and trading. And of course, there was eBay. And I don't want to give it too much credit, but Grailed really helped localize the community of selling pre-owned menswear under one roof. It also helped legitimize the practice of being an archivist for menswear in a way we see it today. Fashion archives have always existed, but this platform for enthusiasts helped popularize many of these old-ass collections and helped grow a consumer base that would otherwise be possibly too fractured for this type of hype bubble to bubble over. It's like day whatever of me editing together this mess, and I'm realizing that really I am briefly describing the history of selling archive menswear online, but not really going into enough detail about the archive community. I think that it could be something interesting to discuss these archivists, like in the vein of like David Cassavant or like Fernando even, kind of discuss how that community has evolved and expanded in the last maybe 5 or 10 years. But it's something that I think would require a little more research, like real journalism, maybe. In all likelihood, obsessives like Cassavant would collect these clothes, and the growing popularity of menswear in platforms like Instagram would still foster the archive community. But in my mind, Grailed was the Sotheby's that made this whole transaction feel legitimate and substantial. It's not the most expensive piece of clothing ever sold. Duh. There are couture pieces that sell for easily $100,000 or more from major couture houses. In fact, it's not even the most expensive pre-owned garment to ever be sold. That title, according to Time magazine, goes to the dress worn by Marilyn Monroe in the classic film The 7-Year Itch for over $5 million. So Drake, next time you actually want to flex on us during a quarantine, why don't you try wearing the Marilyn Monroe dress in your next music video, and maybe then I'll be impressed. Nerd.